Do you do you guys want to start at the back half of this draft or at the front? Because I feel like everybody kind of already knows about Aiden and Jameson, right? Like,
Yeah.
is that cool with you? Do you want to start with like the later picks?
Whatever you guys want to do is fine. I mean,
Okay,
there are components of the Jameson Williams uh, of his game that we should talk about because I think
let's
everybody's just
let's
penciled him
start
as
with
a
him then.
vertical threat. Well, I mean, we can talk about Hutchinson too. So we have talked about him as a safe player, right? But that
Yes.
Yes.
doesn't mean that he's safe and boring and isn't a really good player. I mean, he's really advanced with his hands. That's where Thibodeau is very raw in his game. His first step is for a 6 foot 6.5 dude is legit. I mean, it's freaky. And his issues where I think he looks a little different than some of the other really explosive edge rushers is that he's taller than a lot of them are. When you think about 6'6", and a lot of turning the corner as a pass rusher is reducing the amount of your body that a tackle can touch. So it's like dipping your shoulder and making it so a tackle has to really reach for you or lunge for you, which takes away their power. And Hutchinson's going to have a more difficult time doing that just because he's so much taller than everybody else at the position. But we're talking about a guy who, his agility numbers are ridiculous. They just are. He ran he ran a better agilities than Kyle Hamilton did. He ran better agilities than pretty much most everybody, at the combine. The short shuttle and the 3 cone time for Hutchinson are just amazing for a guy with his body. They just are. So then you look at the way he plays in his hand usage and the ability for him to understand that he's only going to win by keeping an offensive tackle's hands off of him, and he's got really good hand usage. Whether it's a two swipe or a single swipe move when he goes back inside, that kind of stuff. So he's very advanced as a player, and there's so I think we've penciled him in as boring and safe and probably not going to grow a ton, but that doesn't mean that he can't win in a variety of ways. Um, you know what I mean? Like I think people just assume that he's just boring and he's whatever. No, there's explosive qualities about his game, and one of the things that stands out to me is with his feet is that he's so sudden in his movements that he's on top of tackles before they expect him to be there. And in that scenario, I love that he has shorter arms. I do, because just think about it from a bench press standpoint. If you're bench pressing, like Trayvon Walker has 35-inch arms. Now, for
Yeah.
him to extend and lock out a tackle, he's got to move him the full length of his arms. And that last couple inches, that's it's a huge difference. So when you watch Hutchinson, especially when he gets into a situation where he's running bull rush, right? And you can see him, and he does this very consistently. It's almost like a headbutt looking type of move. But to do it, leverage as a pass rusher or really anywhere on the football field is all about getting your hands above the level of your eyes. And that's the only way that you can create leverage, and so his suddenness to get on top of tackles and then for him to drop to get his hands up and drop his head real fast when he makes that move and not have to press off a tackle all that long because he does have shorter arms. The shorter arms actually help him. They really do. And when he is bull rushing tackles, having shorter arms it's better. So when I look at news that comes out today, like the Lions are there's news out today that their defensive coordinator is talking about how they want them to be more of a one gap penetrating system instead of playing two gaps. And there's some technical stuff there about how far they want them getting up the field. Last year they wanted them playing at the heels of the offensive linemen, and this year they're talking about wanting them penetrating up the field, and that's great for a player like Hutchinson. It just is because he's got a two-way go a lot of times. He can beat you outside, or he's going to swim back inside. So I mean, there's a lot of variety in which he can win. I'm really excited about him as a player, and that's coming from a guy who I wanted them to take Thibodeau just because I think his upside might be more, but I still love the pick. It's a great fit. He's a great run defender. He's gritty as can be. He's going to be great. I mean, I don't know how many number 97 jerseys they're printing, but I'm pretty sure it's not enough. Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to sell a ton of jerseys. He is one of the faces of this franchise right now.
Go ahead. Right.
I was just gonna say the whole town of Ann Arbor is gonna buy one of those 97 jerseys, and like you said, he's gritty. He's got that drive. He's got the motor. He's a big Dan Campbell guy, and I always hear, but he's the guy that's gonna get you 12 to 14 sacks a season, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm really cool with that. Like 12 to 14 isn't bad. That's not a bad amount of sacks. That is a Pro Bowl number of sacks. And if he can do that and throw in a couple forced fumbles in there, obviously, like you said, he's a taller guy. So we've seen it. How many times have these defensive ends that don't get to the quarterback, they still bat the ball down. They jump up. I've been seeing that over the NFL
JJ Swat, baby.
More and more in the past couple of years, to where they can't get to the quarterback and they jump up and bat the ball down. And when you got a 6'6" guy on the end like that, that's pretty impressive. I think he's going to be able to do that. I think we're going to see a lot of that from him, to when he can't beat the tackle, he can still jump up and get in the passing lane. And that's, another important, that's just as good of a sack, honestly.
There's a ton of intangibles for him. Absolutely. Yeah. There are so many things that he does do well, and a lot of that, is diagnosing, reading run versus pass kind of stuff. And there's a lot to like about his game. He fits the culture here perfect. He really does. Maybe that's something that I underthought. I don't know, in the process of the Thibodeau, because I think Thibodeau would have been a fine fit here too. Like, Thibodeau's, he's a physical tough guy too. It's not that, I think there's a desire to want to call him more of a finesse player, but I don't think that's fair to what Thibodeau is. But I mean, the Hutchinson thing is, he's an intriguing player. Obviously the Lions loved him. They spent no time on the clock at all making that pick.
Yeah.
There's not much else to say other. It's an exciting player who should come in. I just think that, the idea of him being a 12 to 14 sack guy is going to take a little time. Yes. I would tell you, if he was 6 to 7 next year, that's a really good season for a rookie.
Yeah.
So we got to kind of slow our roll as far as what our expectations are for these guys. I don't know what Myles Garrett did in year one, but it takes time.
Yeah, people going from 6 to midnight on this guy. But can I ask you this though? I did something really nerdy this morning, and I went back to like some of our formations from this past year. I was trying to pinpoint like where he'd be, because I know people are probably picturing him as like a hand in the dirt type of guy, but you actually said something on draft night that you said he almost would prefer to stand up, or he's told teams that he would prefer to stand up. Do you see him as like in the outside linebacker role, or do you see us like staying true to that 4-man front, or is it gonna be like a 5-2, however the math works?
No, I think they're going to be a 4-man front, but it's if he's telling them that he prefers to stand up and it helps him find the ball, then I think that the addition of a player like Josh Pascal makes a ton of sense, because he can be more of your hand in the dirt type guy. It's a good question. I don't have a great answer for it. I know that he is verbally and outwardly told everyone he prefers to stand up. So we'll see. The Lions are moving to a 4-man front, and they are going one gap penetrating style on the defensive side of the ball. That should tell you a couple of things that I think, as a scout and as an evaluator, makes me stand up and take note. Specifically to a player like Levi Onwuzurike, he needs to play in a penetrating style. He at times can play upright, and not with great pad level. And if you're not asking him to penetrate the interior and get upfield, I think you're asking him to lose a little bit, because I'm not sure he plays with a bunch of anchor. So asking him to get up the field more than just kind of hold his gap and just maintain the integrity of his gap, I think is better for his game. I think that it's also better for a player like Aleem McNeil because he has some twitch in that huge body. He can move. So, the idea of the Lions moving away from more of a conservative sort of hold your water defensive line in a hybrid front to an even front where you're penetrating and you're ripping through gaps. To me it speaks to where they want to be from an aggression standpoint, and those are really good things for the players they've added. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I kind of does. I was trying to picture it this morning. This is like
something. So I mean, what they did last year though isn't at all how they're going to line up and run things this year. It's just different.
Okay. So how do you feel about that? I guess with like defenses moving forward, like do you think there's certain base formations that like excel better than other ones too, or like you think it's just kind of just to what you got?
So to me, it's you always want to play to the strengths of the what you have personnel wise. That's one of the things that drives you nuts about sometimes like you have penetrating type players, but if you're Matt Patricia, you refuse to allow them to be penetrating type players. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make a ton of sense what you're doing. And a lot of times the scheme is not as important as what the talent is that you have. So I could care less if you run a 3-man scheme and you want a 2-gap and you don't have the personnel or the body types to do that, and you're still asking players to do that, you're asking to lose. So to me, smart teams do things with their personnel to put their personnel in a position to exceed. Mm-hmm. Think about Aaron Donald not being asked to get up the field.
Yeah.
Because the defensive coordinator is so stuck on the idea that he wants him to 2-gap. And this is what we do on our defense. Well, I think that's stupid. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense for what Aaron Donald is as a player. So I think good, both on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Put your players in a position to succeed. Period. End of story. And you're seeing the Lions transition from what they were last year, and now they're going into a more attacking style. And I think that's great for both their interior defenders. Pretty much for everybody. Like the idea that they're going to let these guys go and just get after the quarterback and let them be much more aggressive and assertive is great for the players that you just added. It just is. It's great for the players that you already have. But, for what they have, I can see a situation where they deploy Hutchinson a little wider, not like wide 9 type stuff like they did with Ansa, but wider where they can allow him to use his quickness and his speed and his power, because he plays with a ton of power too. So, I think it's tough to look at what they did last year and figure out what they're going to be this year. I just, in the end, it's football. And, I think it's awesome that they're going to ask their defensive line to be more aggressive. We should be very, very happy about that. That's great news.
Yeah,
definitely.
It is.
As far as like, I'm not going to ask you to do that. I think it's kind of like trying to predict the future of like who'd be our 4.
Ask.
Who do you think our 4 starting down like linemen are going to be in this new system?
Obviously, so I think Hutchinson's going to play a lot. Yeah. And then you're going to have a rotation of, Onwuzurike and McNeil, and Brockers is going to be in there somewhere.
Pascal's
going to be a rotational piece, I think, in year 1 with the ability to play inside as a 3 technique.
Mm-hmm.
He is
the Okwara brothers, like.
So I don't know what's going to happen with Romeo Okwara. We don't know what his recovery looks like. So that's a big unknown. I think Charles Harris is going to play as a outside linebacker, pass rusher, opposite where Aidan Hutchinson is lined up.
That's okay. That's
right. So I kind of think that's where they are. So you have in run downs or 1st and 10, 2nd and 10 type situations, you might have Hutchinson and Pascal might be in there as a 3, or he might be in there as a 5 kind of thing. You could see Charles Harris being in there. You could see Romeo Okwara being in there as a pass rusher. Julian, they have they have the ability to match up in down and distance with just about everybody. But the really nice thing about the players they've added are these guys are they're going to be very difficult to play against. So you got a lot tougher on your defensive line. You just did. In a weekend, you went from having needs on your defensive line at the edges to filling those needs with tough, tenacious players who are really effective against the run, but also really athletic and can do things as pass rushers too. And then you look at, the depth behind them with Charles Harris and both the Okwaras and everything else that they have. And it's just, they have a lot. They have a lot of pass rushers now.
A lot.
And last year they were really bad rushing the passer. So it's a little bit like looking at the receiver. That's why I brought up the receiver room earlier. In one offseason, the Lions went from pretty empty in their receiver room to now feeling like, okay, it's pretty loaded going forward. And I think you could say the same thing about the edge position. Now, obviously, Hutchinson has to work. He's got to play up to the level of which he was drafted. Pascal's got to work. His game's super interesting. So those guys have to pan out as players, and it takes time. With Pascal, is he going to be a full-time player? No. But there's a rotation that's going to happen, and they're going to do everything that they can to put him in a situation to succeed and do really good things. So, but they are loaded at the position now. They have lots of talent there. Some of it's the unknown with like Romeo Okwara. We don't know. Who knows?
You know what, too? I was almost disappointed. Pascal, I'm hopeful for him. I'm not 100% sure on what to read. I haven't watched much tape on him, if I'm being completely honest. But Julian Okwara, to me, emerged a little bit as a 3 technique for us last year. I thought he had a couple good bull rushes. I think obviously he has some issues defending the run, but I thought there was still some potential in him even. But this draft is making me question a lot of things. With what I thought him.
Yeah, mainly. But you can never have enough pass rushers. You just can't. So if Okwara becomes a third down pass rushing specialist type of guy, and remember, Pascal's a rookie, so he probably is not going to play as much as we think, right? It takes time for these guys to come in and be full-time, full-time dudes. It's just that's why the Pascal thing is interesting. It doesn't mean that Julian Okwara loses snaps or gets relegated kind of thing. We don't know with Romeo Okwara. We know Charles Harris is going to be a pass rusher for them. He is. They have lots of options and unique players who do different things to where, first and 10, second and 10 type stuff. You can deploy a variety of players who can get after the quarterback. You can, if it's 3rd and 5 where you want to be disciplined and make sure that you're covering the run, you can do that too. Pascal can kick inside where Hutchinson can play outside. And then McNeil's eating up blocks and Charles Harris is coming off the corner. There's a lot of ways that they can make this work.
Football, Scott. Calm
but
down,
you
man.
need talent, right? Like you need building blocks and foundational pieces and talent to be able to do all these things. And they didn't have a ton of that last year. And it's reflective in how poor they were rushing the passer. And in one offseason, they've added a bunch of pieces that are intriguing guys. We can get into, if you want to hit Williams real fast, because I think everybody knows what Williams is as far as speed,
Give me some ganja. 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 Give me some ganja.